Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's special edition episode of How Humans of Wharton. Today, we have the distinct honor of welcoming 3 guests, and this time our host, Elena, will actually be playing the role as a guest as well, and so I will be leading the majority of the questions. I'd love to welcome everyone today: Carolyn Magill, Liz Miller, Sharmila, and Elena Anfimova as our guests. So, without any further ado, let's get started. So I think it's really important that we introduce our ladies today, understanding basically how did you all meet?
I was just thinking that I met Liz in preterm because we were both part of the healthcare program. So we met even before classes actually started. And then, Sharmila, I'm suspecting that you and I met on the rugby pitch when we were tossing a ball around with the men's team. Does that sound right?
That sounds about right. I'm pretty sure it was totally tied to rugby. And I sort of got dragged into the idea, and I have to say, you closed the deal.
Well, it turns out that Sharmila and Liz, and later we discovered Elena, are phenomenal athletes. And it's way more fun to play a very physical, demanding game like that with women who can sprint fast and catch balls and understand how to read a field. So that was pretty much apparent from the minute we stepped on a pitch together.
And maybe I can interject because I think it's important to note that Carolyn, very well spoken, but very calm, almost soft spoken. But I mean, you have to put into context that she's a total rugby star. She's a total rugby star. I've seen her tackle men on the pitch. She's a wing. She runs faster than most everyone, man or woman. And she also had an illustrious rugby career before she got to the Wildebeests. So she played in undergrad. I believe you even played on the national team. If you the under 17 or under 18 national team, under 23, national team. So she's a total star on the field, and a lot to learn from.
It was a lot of fun, and we also benefited, I think, from. So we were the Wildebeests. And the men's team were the Warthogs, and
great names.
Which, by the way, I didn't quite understand what that meant until we went on a class trip. Some of us went on a trip to Africa on safari, and Nitin, I think, organized it. And I saw them, the Wildebeests and the Warthogs, in person. And I don't know that those were like the most inspiring of mascots, but it worked for us, and we had such a great rapport. And they were phenomenal athletes, so we had a lot of fun practicing together.
And I think for us too, we had all played sports. I know Sharmila was a tennis star, and I had played soccer all growing up and through college, and then Carolyn had played, obviously. But I think what was really fun was in our late 20s being able to play on a team sport again, which many of us hadn't had the opportunity to do. So it was just a great experience to be able to play on a team sport again. And Carolyn really emphasized, even though Sharmila's right, she was a phenomenal rugby player, she really emphasized the no experience necessary part of joining the team. So we really had all levels. And, in the beginning, many of us really didn't know what we were doing in terms of playing rugby, but quickly we're able to learn the sport, at least well enough to play in NBA tournaments.
So now we have to tell the story of how Elena came to join the team. And I think it was at a Walasa party. It was 2:30 in the morning, something like that. I'm standing in this circle, and we're all, drunk probably, or having a good time at least. And I just was looking at Elena and thinking, she looks like a good athlete. So I started asking her questions, and it turns out she was a dancer. And I thought, dancers are strong. They tend to be fast runners. And then I just asked her, what are you doing tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.? Want to join our wildebeest practice? And I thought, never in a million years is this woman going to remember, going to want to drag herself out of bed in 5 hours' time, whenever she finally gets to bed, to head over to the pitch. But sure enough, she showed up, and she brought a tremendous amount of spirit with her.
She did bring a lot of spirit. In fact, my favorite memory of Elena is, do you guys remember going to that tournament at Columbia? And she really did shoot the boot. She really did. She was the first one to do it that I had seen, and it was awesome.
So Carolyn and I met the same night, earlier that night, and it was at Chris Motes' house, where like they were playing guitars, like playing American songs, which I did not know, obviously. And so I just see this girl, and like she's tiny, right? She's like super petite, and like, but I see this like blue ocean, like just all I saw her was her eyes, and she made me sing American songs, which I did not know.
That is true. I feel like, Elena, you couldn't speak English all that well when we first met.
No.
So that made it even more fun.
And then we say goodbyes, and then I go to Campbell's, and I see Sharmila, and then I see the same girl with Sharmila. So it turns out that they knew each other. I never saw her before, and that's when she has this genius idea to recruit me.
So Sharmila, I'm so curious, what about your experiences growing up or working pre-Wharton prepared you to be such a phenomenal athlete on the field?
All right, let me think about that. I think it probably was inherited. It was probably inherited. If I think about my mother or my grandmother on my mother's side, both were fiercely competitive, and that spirit has come through in many people in my family.
Just to pause for a moment, does anybody here think Sharmila is competitive? Love it.
I've spent the last 2 decades trying to soften that and get some of that coached out so that I don't leave bodies on the field.
I had something really embarrassing happen in flag football once, where I did do a flat out tackle, and it was of a man, and it wasn't intentional. I was just sort of caught up in the moment. But I did feel terrible.
And was it like a clean, like right above the knees?
I leveled him. Yeah, I leveled him.
That must have been tough for his ego.
For his ego, that's what I was thinking too. Probably wasn't expecting that.
I mean, I'm sure he enjoyed it.
I learned a lot from your technique in tackling, and I think that made me a better tackler in flag football.
I'm curious to hear, so were the Wharton Wildebeests like a feared team across the competitive landscape? How did you all do as a team?
Yeah, we were good.
Yeah, we were good. We got to were we in the finals of the Duke competition?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some Amazonian women from another business school, I think, took it, but
I don't remember who won.
Wasn't it Stanford?
I feel like we won the party, though.
For sure.
I just remember wearing trucker hats before trucker hats were cool.
So, Sharmila, I don't even know what you're up to now.
Oh my gosh. Well, this can't be about me, Carolyn. This first has to be about you, because we are celebrating you on this one. So I'm happy to share my news, but only after we hear your news. By the way, Carolyn, congratulations on your big news from last year. I was so excited to hear about it at my birthday. Do you want to give us a little preview of that?
That's right. So for Sharmila's birthday, I got married. So let's see, after I think I actually brought Ellie to our last reunion, and so he and I had met in college as freshmen, and then reconnected at our 20th college reunion. So if anybody is single out there, or divorced, whatever it might be, go to your college reunion. So we reconnected at that, and we had planned to do a big wedding, and then COVID hit. So we paired it back, and it was actually just a couple of us, and it was just a stunning experience. So yes, very, very happy about how things transpired.
So great. And how's work going for you, Carolyn?
So work is phenomenal. It's been really fun. So I've been, just to give the quick summary, I did my summer internship at the same place that I ended up working for 8 years. And I loved it. So I'm in healthcare, and I worked for United Health Group. And they were just always giving me these opportunities that were way above my head, like every 18 to 24 months, like, oh, you don't know Medicaid, try it. Here's a turnaround of a health plan that's failing. You figure it out, that kind of thing. So it was really, really fun. And then I was, after 8 years, was recruited away to join a startup. And at the time, I didn't know if a startup would work, but I knew I had only ever worked for health insurance companies. And I was like, I need to see how health systems and hospitals think. And the startup was focused on them. So I went there, and lo and behold, 3 years later, we were 150 million in revenue. We IPO'd. It was just, standing on the podium at NYSE. It was really, really exciting. And I caught the bug. So I was recruited to be the CEO of another company that was a much bigger company, also in the technology space, and just found a company that's already established is not so fun for me. So had the opportunity to join my current company, which is called Aetion, 4 years ago. And we were just a total startup at the time with a really good idea, a tech platform that figures out how well health treatments work for different patient populations. And it was amazing because you recruit in this team and you build something together from the early days of when you have no idea if anybody's even going to buy what you're trying to sell. And then last month we raised our Series C of 110 million with Warburg Pincus. And it's just really fun to see how things come full circle. But this means we now have capital at our disposal to make some really big decisions about how we can influence the market and where we go from here. So it's super fun.
That's amazing. I was looking for my clapping, but I don't have any emoticons. That's how I speak now on these meetings.
Tell us about what you're up to nowadays.
Let's see. I grew up on a small lane in Illinois, very green, had a nice childhood. No, I think since you last saw me, I went to New York. You knew all that. Then I followed I met a cute warthog in business school, and we got married. And I followed him to the Middle East, where we've been living since end of 2008, beginning of 2009. Have had 2 children, half wildebeest, half warthog. One is 12, one is 8 right now. A lot of attitude. I was actually going to ask Liz for some advice on how to raise these young children. I've been listening to a lot of books on tape, which I hear now are called Audible, about how to deal with children on the cusp of teenagedom. So that's been incredibly enlightening. And then on the work front, I spent some time with the first one at home for a year and realized that I needed a few more things going on in my life to stay busy. So I found a job with a private family business in the Middle East that's the partner of luxury brands across the Middle East. It's now operating in India, has moved into Africa and Latin America. And I've had 6 jobs and now 12 offices with them. I just moved into my latest office. My boxes are around me. For the past 7 years, I've been operating different businesses. Most recently, I've been managing the department stores and off-price business and launched the online marketplace, a little bit of a digital transformation, later than the rest of the world, but we're trying to catch up. And as of this year, I've taken on a new role where I'm leading the investments of the group and for the family, and I'm now the Chief Investment Officer.
Phenomenal. And one quick question, how many languages do your kids speak?
Well, three right now. The older one is learning her fourth.
Amazing. I just remember meeting them at one point, and they were little. They were rattling something off in French, then something off in Arabic, and then perfect English. Just really, really special.
I can't wait for you to meet them now that they're getting bigger. I mean, I when I hear Liz, like you talking about going to see schools, it seems crazy, but the older one just, turned 12, and it's around the corner. I'm going to kind of wake up and have to be there soon. So.
Yeah, for Sharmila's 40th birthday party, her husband, who was a co-captain of the men's rugby team at Wharton, organized a surprise party. And what a party it was, huh?
And you guys came for like a weekend. You came from the U.S. for a weekend. I can't believe that. That was like such a power move. And then we did a pyramid, and Carolyn then carried us around, of course.
And Carolyn, you squeezed in a slope at a mall. Remember, you went skiing.
That's right. You can ski inside in Dubai. It was magic.
Did you like elbow people out of the way? Shredding the moguls.
It was so much fun, like to ski. It was so hot outside, and then to just go inside, and yeah, it was really fabulous. Every city should have indoor skiing. So what about Liz? Will you tell us what you're up to?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, thanks, Carolyn. So now I think you guys know I started in healthcare and I worked as a nurse, and so I was a very, very non-traditional student at Wharton, and came into the program with a clinical background, but really with an interest in impacting healthcare at a broader level. And when you're a nurse, you really, you take care of the 5 people that you're taking care of, and so really to have a systems approach to things. My mentors recommended business school because they thought, you can learn how other industries solve problems and how, other people think through things. So that was my route to school. And since then, I've continued to work in healthcare, also on the health plan side, with a little bit with an interim role on the provider side. But today I run a large health plan, so it's a $15 billion P&L. We serve over 2 million people, about 2.3 million people in Florida. So about 11% of the population of the state are in the programs that I run. And it's really a population health effort. So really it's about raising the health level, really impacting the health of this really large cohort of people. And so it's been a great experience just being able to approach it from that perspective and looking at how to align payments and align providers and align the whole system around raising these health metrics for the population that we serve. So it's been a really good experience for me, and a really great way to, I think, impact health across the state. So that's on a professional level. And on a personal level, I'm also a mom. I think you guys know I had a baby like right before we graduated, so that was my first baby. And she just turned 17, so I always know what reunion we're at because of her birthday. So we graduated 17 years ago. And I also have so she's a girl, Claire, and then I have 3 other children. So the baby's 6.5. So juggling motherhood and work is kind of my life right now.
Well, that's fantastic to hear. Elena, you're up next. I think everyone else has shared kind of where they've been, and I think our listeners would love this treat to hear how their host has been doing since Wharton.
Well, leading up to Wharton, I came to Wharton from Ukraine. literally the day before the program started. Since then, I went to work for a hedge fund, emerging markets focused hedge fund in New York. And I did that for 8 years. And for the last 2 years, I moved to Istanbul to open a regional office for the hedge fund. And that was nice because, I would get to see Sharmila when she would come to visit family. And we could go clubbing and dancing like the old days. And then I switched to work for IFC, the investment arm of the Wharton Group. And after that, while I was there, I saw that the companies that we invested in really did not have good reporting system. It was just, there was no single source of truth. So I would have to wait for the reports, delays, errors, sometimes massaging the numbers and all of that. And I asked myself, why do we keep trying to improve their governance and get them to do better reporting if we can simply take their cash flow data and analyze it on our end? And with that idea in mind, I quit to start a fintech business. And so a year ago, I had to come back to Ukraine for family reasons. And now I am teaching investment management at a local business school at a Kyiv Mohila Academy, and also doing some roll-ups / internal M&A for IT industry. So.
And Elena, are you in Kiev or Kharkov?
Right now in Kiev.
Okay.
Wow. It's amazing to hear how far each of you have come since you met each other in your days in the Wildebeests. I'm very curious to know from each of you, kind of, given that you've known each other for so long, like what were your expectations for each other at the time when you met, and like what is it like now, like taking this moment to see how far all of you come? Like what are your thoughts, or how do you feel about how far everyone has come along the way?
I mean, I'm so proud. I mean, I'm so excited about your successes. It's fantastic. I mean, definite ups and downs, but it's really incredible. It's wonderful.
When you connect with people in the context of business school, because so much of your time is learning, right? And you're learning from one another, and you're in so many circumstances in the classroom and also outside of it where you're getting exposed to cultures or new ways of thinking that you've never experienced before. And I mean, I can think back to business school and some of the lessons and things that I observed from Sharmila, Elena, and Liz are among the best out there. So it doesn't surprise me that here we are 17 years later, that there is, that they've been so successful and learned so much along the way. And then the other thing I'd say is how gratifying it is, because I've also reached out to each one of them over the last nearly 2 decades at different points, just needing perspective. And Sharmila, when we had your birthday weekend in Dubai, like that was so refreshing. And some of the people I met there continue to be among my closest friends, which is just so remarkable how these communities come together. And then, Liz and I are in the same industry. And so, sometimes I'm just shooting her a quick text with a question. Sometimes it's a longer conversation. But just really appreciating all of what we've brought to each other over the years. And I love that Elena's laugh is still as joyful today as it was when we were in school. And I think, Elena, that's how you broke through any language barrier that may have existed.
I love what Sharmila said earlier, too, just about how, I think naturally we're all very competitive people. And it was, it can be really, it was okay to be competitive at Wharton. And it was okay to be competitive on the rugby pitch. And, I think we all appreciated that about each other. But I think we've all just like she said, we've all softened our approach to, we're as competitive on the inside, but I think over the last 17 years, we've all softened our approach to that so that we're a little bit, we've developed into leaders that now, can take that, but can also lead a team in a little bit of a softer way. So like she said, we don't leave bodies on the field.
So about Carolyn, I knew right away that she was going to be CEO. I don't know if she knew, but I knew. I actually remember convincing her and trying to talk her into becoming CEO because she was going to United Health. And in my mind, she had to be CEO day one after graduating business school. She was just always kind of like shepherding everybody, kind of like emotionally hugging everybody, including everybody, making sure there's space for everybody gets heard, everybody gets their airtime. I sucked at rugby when I joined the team. It's like that concept of throwing the ball backward just did not click. And still she would let me play. And I am aware, I know, I want the team to win. And she's like, it's okay. She's like, you're doing your best. It was probably the first time when somebody was so supportive and so nurturing. Nurturing is the word. And I remember years later when I read something from Harvard Business Review about we enter the era of female leadership, nurturing, kind, emotionally intelligent, and she was the symbol of that to me. And for Sharmila was a hardcore investment person. Didn't you go to meet Warren Buffett?
And weren't you on TV too?
You were in the investment club and all of that. Didn't you go to you went to the M&A arbitrage hedge fund right afterward? Didn't you, Sharon? So I was sure. And when she just said that she became a chief investment officer, boom. You see, it did not escape you anyway. You got it.
Came back to bite me. But I love what you said about Carolyn, I love, Elena, what you said about Carolyn's leadership style. It is true that you were so ahead of your time. You were inclusive, you were encouraging, and you still got us to run fast.
Oh yeah. But no.
We had a lot of fun, and the nice thing about rugby is that it really does require all shapes and sizes and styles to be successful as a team. I think more so than nearly any other field sport out there. And so getting people who force you to slow down, like if it had just been, Sharmila and I, who had both played rugby before, we have our own ways of doing things, but to throw in Liz, who'd played soccer, and Elena, who danced, and we had some spouses out there who really hadn't done much athletic activity at all before joining the Wildebeests team. And you get these different perspectives, and all of a sudden you realize, we're much better for slowing it down or really thinking through what we're doing, what's different about this versus some of the other activities we've done.
Guys,
that was exceptionally well said.
Have I been yelling? I'm just realizing because you talk normally, and I'm yelling because the sound is not very good in my end, so I'm overcompensating.
No,
it's fine. It's fine for us.
Yep.
And Liz has been frozen in a perfectly beautiful smile, but it's important to note that Liz kind of downplayed that she's also a CEO, and I was like, wow, in what kind of just random Thursday evening podcast do I jump on with two CEOs? And Elena, you've accomplished so much. This is amazing. It's wonderful.
The other thing that I want to bring up, and I'm not sure exactly how to frame it. I should have thought of this ahead of time. But the other thing that I'm really appreciative about for this group is the whole person element. So Sharmila, you had mentioned, geez, I could take some notes from Liz and her 4 kids, the oldest of whom is 17, and as your girls approach, go through their adolescence into teenage years. For me, I would say I always indexed on achievement and like sort of intellect, if you will, or like, I don't know how to say this. I didn't necessarily think as holistically about how I present in the world. And this is a euphemism for saying that I wasn't so into fashion. I didn't really put much time into how I looked, and I just felt like, that's not my thing. Other people are, beautiful. Other people dress well or present themselves all completely put together. My thing is running fast on a rugby pitch. Thinking about hard. Tackling hard, just tackle hard and move on to the next one. Like I didn't see it. And both Elena and Sharmila in particular helped me become more well-rounded in that regard. Elena took me to a store once and was like, and I'd never experienced anything like this. She just had 10 different outfits in the dressing room and was like, here. And I came out of there thinking like, this is like, seriously? I can do this too? And it sounds so goofy in retrospect. And then Sharmila, I don't know if you remember, you introduced me to Kiehl's for skincare. And that was another thing that I just thought, and it's an awkward thing for me to acknowledge and to express, but I'm so appreciative that you took me under your wing in that respect too, because it taught me that we're not all just sort of one-sided, or we can, those realms that maybe we didn't think we could play in are not as inaccessible as we maybe had once thought.
Oh my gosh, that's so nice to hear that. Carolyn, you've always been beautiful, and you haven't aged a day, so that Kiehl's product has worked very well. And you've always brought your rugby fashion. I wish I was kind of like trying to find a photo of us on tour, because I think there's some pretty good ones of you demonstrating your fashion sense when we were on tour.
I'm sure.
Carolyn, that really segues very well into another question that I have for the panel here. Relating back to your days on the rugby pitch, what's something that you feel that you've learned, whether it be actually on the pitch or maybe, somewhat associated with your time as a rugby team, as the Wildebeests, that you've applied to your life outside of rugby, be it personal or business related?
I think some of what I took from the experience we've touched on already, and it mostly relates to the different people that we assembled on the team with varying degrees of experience, and how you can bring together people like that and be a really successful team. And a successful team for us didn't necessarily mean we were winning the World NBA championships, but it certainly meant that we were cohesive as a team and that we understood how to work with one another. Like Elena said, first coming on and not realizing what it meant, to pass this ball in a way that that really is very different from any other sport any of us have ever played previously. And then you come together and you realize these different perspectives of where people come from, of the sports that they did previously, really do make us stronger. And that's the kind of thing, as you build teams, and certainly in the startup realm, so this is my third startup, and you realize that you need people who look at the world differently. If we were all kind of hard charging, if you will, prone to action, we miss the opportunity to slow it down and think more analytically. And so bringing together teams that represent different personal styles and ways of communicating, in addition to having different experiences, is the most compelling way to bring people together.
What an eloquent answer. Oh my gosh.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to hang out with you guys every Thursday morning because you were so sweet.
I learned that when you work out with warthogs early in the morning, Carolyn and I and Elena, I think we would get up and these kind of like pre-dawn workouts, and the guys were just like, oh my gosh, they were a whole situation that early in the morning. So I don't know, maybe a lesson of like how early to have meetings, but maybe more importantly, I learned so much about myself, so much about maybe how to understand the trade-offs between, kind of winning at all costs, working with different people with different kind of objectives, and so many times I think back to some of those moments on the field. I can't remember so many other things, but I do remember times on the field and how how I want to be a better person. And I think everything that Carolyn has said about managing within these different groups and her leadership style, I learned a lot from these ladies on this call.
The four of you are clearly, amazing leaders that also happen to be females, and I think it's a true testament to, how everyone can be a leader. And I'm curious specifically what your thoughts are on female empowerment and, things that we as a society have done well recently and what we still have to accomplish to kind of, have more equity.
That's a big question. So maybe I'll share one point, and then, as the ball gets rolling, I might jump in again. I really am a believer that it's not a sort of female equity topic. It's a question of diversity and diversity of thought. We started playing around with themes like groupthink. I think I probably heard it in business school for the first time. I think I also heard emotional intelligence for the first time in business school. Little did I know how important that would be. and this idea of groupthink, really, I started to understand what it meant as I had more years of experience and saw when you have people who are alike for whatever reason, alike because of gender, alike because of nationality, background, experience set, you start to think alike, you take like decisions, you can't see alternatives, and you have trouble having the best outcome. So I think whether it's in any kind of corporate setting or business setting or any setting where you're trying to achieve goals, it's critical to have this diversity. And so in order to kind of get there, we have to be willing to try to set aside our biases when we're deciding, who's right or who fits in whatever they're doing. And my wise warthog husband said years ago that women will be equal when it's okay for men to be stay-at-home dads. And that still resonates with me.
Powerful.
And that really has enabled me to focus professionally on my career. Some people tell me not to highlight that because it. In fact, somebody said that to me yesterday. Like, if you attribute your success to having a stay-at-home dad, it sort of takes away from what you've done. But really, it has enabled me to focus really on my career without having to focus on some of the day-to-day of taking care of 4 children. So, that's, I think, just an example. But, I lead a very large team. I have 4,000 people on my team. About 70, it's healthcare. So about 70% are women. But at the company, as you get higher up within the company, at the executive level, about 20% are women. and at the board level, about 15% are women. So it's, so just as you develop in the executive levels of all the companies that I've worked with, that's sort of been the trend. And one thing that we're working on now really is focusing on, and you guys may have heard this or seen this concept, but it's diversity of slate, and making sure that as you're interviewing candidates for leadership roles, or as that your panel is diverse in terms of how you're selecting candidates, and then also that you're making sure that you have diverse candidates to interview for roles. So you're not just interviewing all of you're really, really consciously making sure that you're bringing all diverse perspectives to the table for the interview process and for the selection process. And to me, that's been one of the more promising efforts, as I've seen, just in terms of being able to identify and select women to advance in roles.
Yeah, I think that's an important point that oftentimes. Now, by the way, I don't know if other people are getting feedback. Yeah, okay, there we go. It's gone. I think that's a really important point, Liz. So I'm on the board of an organization called parity.org. And all we do is try to get organizations to make the commitment that for vice president positions and above, including boards of director seats, they will interview one woman and someone from an underrepresented minority. And simply by changing that process, looking a little harder to find qualified candidates who maybe have different backgrounds than our neighbors or our friends or the people that we would normally, or just our work circles that we would normally tap into, opens our eyes to the fact that there are a lot more people out there who could help us diversify that we wouldn't necessarily find in the ways that we conducted our searches previously. And then the other thing that you said that resonates for me is how important it is to find examples day to day of how to support each other. And I think David, as an example, as your husband, is finding ways day to day to support you. And I wouldn't disavow that at all. I'd be singing that from the hilltops. I think there are ways that we can support people as they are developing skills in their careers. And sometimes it's as simple as you're in a meeting and you notice, and Elena, you mentioned this even on the rugby pitch, right? Like, oh, someone's not participating as much. They're a little bit more quiet. So you create the space, or you say, hey, what do you think of that? And I try to tell women on my team in particular, you're in this room for a reason. And I don't care if we're meeting with the CEO of a top 20 biopharma manufacturer. There's a reason you're sitting at this table, and we want to hear your voice. And let it be known, even from your introduction of your background, don't underplay it. There's a reason you're at this table. And then helping them appreciate what that reason is, because we don't always acknowledge it ourselves, and giving them real-time examples. And then there's other things too. Last week I was in a strategy session with my senior leadership team, and there's a small group discussion, and then you do a report out. And there's 3 topics to report out after the small group discussion. And there's 2 men in this group and 1 woman. And wouldn't you know that the first guy takes the first 2 topics? And I could tell, they were displaying a slide, I could tell from the verbiage on the slide that he was not the person who wrote it, that it was the woman, in fact, who'd written it. And, so that was an example, and I called it out. Liz, looks like you authored this slide. Those are words that I know you use. Can you tell us more about what you were thinking? And then talking to him about it afterwards, why'd you think you had to volunteer for 2? 3 of you in the group, 3 items to discuss, and help people recognize real time the kinds of things that they can do differently to be more inclusive and to be more empowering of the people that they work with.
Oh my gosh, can we have a moment? First of all, I just took a few notes, learning from you guys. How cool is it that you are there to lead these people? I just loved being on the field with you, and I think you're probably just an amazing boss, both of you. And also, I'd like to have a shout out for your husband, Liz. We have a moment for David.
Sharmila, though, being an executive of any form is one of the most humbling experiences ever. right? And so my biggest challenge right now, I mentioned we're Series C. We had some really good successes last year. FDA is using our platform to assess safety and effectiveness of COVID treatments. Like there's some things that are really exciting. But, 0 to 4, if you will, I've been there 4 years. We all had to be scrappy. And as a CEO, I was in everything. I was selling, I was doing marketing, I was, just supporting every aspect of operations, you name it, the business. Well, for us to get from where we are today with our 200 people and continuing to grow at a, doubling every year, or whatever our pace we hope to maintain, now my leadership style has to morph from this scrappy, I'm in everything and roll up my sleeves and help everybody, to taking a step back and really trying to empower other people. And it is so humbling. And you know that you've assembled this phenomenal team, and yet it can be so hard to take a step back and give people the space to do things differently than you would do them. And maybe it happens at a different pace. And when is that okay? And when do you need to step in and guide and support? And that's the next leadership challenge for me. So I'll look forward to continuing to learn from the three of you for this next iteration.
We can't wait to see how this all goes. Elena.
Yes.
You have to jump in now.
Well, first of all, about Liz's husband, that's exactly what Queen Elizabeth, late husband, did for her, right? Like, that's exactly what Prince Philip did.
Liz, I don't know if you just heard Elena comparing David to Prince Philip.
Such nonsense, right? If somebody says, oh, you shouldn't highlight it. This is such a point of pride, and he did it for you. Wow.
Yeah, no, I'm very, very lucky. It's definitely, people always say, like, how do you do it? How do you have 4 kids and this very intense career? And that's, I guess, my secret weapon. That's really how. I did want to tie one thing back. I know we were just talking about interviewing diverse candidates, and I think actually, just as I'm reflecting on it, it really is a metaphor for how Carolyn built our rugby team. And as I'm looking at interviewing candidates and filling roles now, I'm gonna think in the back of my mind, I'm gonna look for the dancers. I'm gonna look for the people that weren't necessarily the rugby players in college. Absolutely. I'm gonna look for the dancers.
We talk about spotting talent.
Being shameless is what that was.
I'm sure there were, I do remember some other examples, but I think this is absolutely spot on in spotting talent. And going back to this idea of having diversity of experience, diversity of thought. I mean, Elena, I always appreciated your perspective on, and I have for all of these years. I mean, you really come out, even in the beginning where, you were kind of you're a little spotty on the English. When you needed to communicate it, you were communicating very profound observations and very important things that I don't want to share kind of everything on this call, but incredible perspective. And I mean, your career journey coming from a very U.S.-centric background from when I entered Wharton and now to kind of be away from that, you brought incredible perspective and diversity of thought that I didn't have in many circumstances. And I appreciate how you've been so courageous on your journey.
Thank you. I love you. I love all of you, ladies. Thank you.
By the way, I've learned that this is the new heart symbol.
Wait, we can't see it. What is?
Go bit center.
It's a little heart like this. Yeah. If you want to be a little Korean K-pop star.
And just to wrap us up, I know we historically have a kind of formula for our podcast, but I think it's such an important topic that we're touching on right now in terms of diversity. And I really would love to hear, because you all seem so well versed in it, your advice or recommendations for all our individual listeners who might find themselves in those board meetings where they, are succumbing to groupthink, or in organizations where there seems like there's a lot of inertia. What do you recommend, whether it be a white male or someone who's just in a group that's like of the majority, how do we kind of use our voice and our platform to increase diversity of thought in the way that we proceed?
Carolyn's typing up her thoughts first.
I thought I was on mute. You caught me. I was telling my 11:30 that I'm going to be like right at the minute here. Oh goodness.
Yeah, that was a big question to ask with a couple minutes left, so I apologize.
It's a great question, Sean. I mean, I would just say, in the moment, be aware. Be aware of who's speaking. Be aware of whose perspective you're listening to. Be aware when someone repeats what someone else has just said and takes credit for it. Be aware when there is not a diversity of thinking, and how valuable it is when you can seek that out. And the more that we hold ourselves accountable minute to minute, meeting by meeting, the more likely we are to drive systemic change.
I also really work on focusing on creating a safe environment for my team so that their perspectives, they know that their perspectives can be heard. And I always think, the people that are on my team are the people that are going to be on board for the next, 10 or 20 years. So I just try to start with really what's so much in my control to create that environment, knowing that it's really going to make a difference, as everybody develops and as they start to impact at a broader level.
I think I would just add really quickly to that. One of the things that I've really learned, and maybe being in a different set of countries, is that there's people feel different in different communication styles. So maybe us feel very comfortable in a group setting or in a board setting voicing our opinion. Others don't, and that's okay. And there's ways to approach it with one-on-ones before you come to the board meeting, so that you ensure that there is a wide variety of thought and opinion that's shared globally.
All great input.
Say, know your stuff. There is nothing that improves your confidence as a minority person in the boardroom as knowing your numbers, knowing your stuff, being prepared. Even when somebody pushes back on what you're saying because you're a woman or any other minority, facts are facts.
Absolutely. No, I love how you gave that perspective for also not just the majority person, but also for the minority people. That is absolutely great advice to take into consideration. And I know we have some very important people on our call that have rigid schedules, that have meetings. So I think this was an amazing conversation. And I loved how we had a different spin on the episode this week. Elena, thank you for passing me the torch to lead it. I hope our listeners enjoyed it as much as I did. And I'm excited to see what you all accomplish in the future. Thank you so much for being on our show today.
Thank you so much. This was phenomenal.
How do you do it again?
I'm just reminded I haven't had a manicure in a year and a half.
I'm sending you guys hugs.
Hugs right back at you.
Love you.
So fabulous. Love you guys.